Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to be back with another artist series. And today we have a man of the cloth. He is the youth pastor at the Life Church. We have Pastor Alvin Hamilton. How you doing, Pastor?
I'm doing really well. I'm so excited to be here, just starting the new year off with you. Thank you for having me.
We got to start the new year off the right way with the Word of God.
Let's go. Let's go.
So I want you to take me back a little bit and tell me, how did you get into pastoring?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I actually did not grow up in church. My family, they are believers, but we didn't go to church consecutively. So we went to church on major holidays like Christmas, like Easter. But as far as being raised in a church, I just didn't have that experience. I ended up going to school at Virginia Commonwealth University on scholarship. And while I was there, I went to a church called the Life Church RVA and really just fell in love with the idea of serving people. I didn't know at the time that the opportunity to become a pastor would be a part of my journey and a part of my story. I had no clue that my life would connect with so many people. And so I ended up dropping out of college, giving away my scholarship, and saying, God, I want to pursue you. I want to do this full time. God, I want to be impactful for the rest of my life. And it was difficult at first because I didn't have any prior knowledge or context to what being a pastor was like. But I trusted that if God called me to it, he would definitely see a way for me to pursue it and be in it and be relatively successful in it. So that's kind of how I got my start in it.
Wow, I love that. I love that how God just kind of called you to leave it all and to follow
Yes.
him. That's incredible. So tell me, you're a young person.
Yep.
And sometimes it's hard being a young Christian. All your friends aren't at the same level you might be at. So you're trying to balance, I want to be with my friends, but I'm
Yep.
also living this life following God. So how do you kind of balance those two things?
I don't know if I found balance yet. I don't know if I'm looking for balance right now or a way to navigate both of them at the same time. I don't know if being young and being serious for God has to be exclusive. I think you can do both at the same time. And I think you find yourself confused and you find yourself in a little bit of a jam when you try to separate the two. That's how you become double minded or have a double life. So I think what I've tried to do is find a way to show up boldly as myself in both. My pastor always says, be yourself in every room so that you don't have to remember who you were the last time. And so I think being bold and acknowledging the fact, you know what, I am young, but I can be young and love God. I can dress nice and love God. I can be youthful and still be serious about my walk. I think that the goal of my life is to show every generation that no matter where you may be on the age scale, you can still be used and impacted by God.
Wow, I love that, Pastor Alvin. I think, yeah, just showing up who you are in both spaces. And I think that lets people know, I'm young, but I'm not compromising on what I believe. This is who
For
I am,
sure.
fully showing up as yourself. So you're a youth pastor,
Yes, ma'am.
and some people have some misconceptions about the youth. They just want to TikTok all day. They're not serious.
Yeah.
So you're working with them day in and day out. What would you say is the biggest misconception about the youth?
I think the biggest misconception about teenagers or young people is that they don't have the capacity for deepness or spirituality. And when I look at the Bible and I look at all the people that Jesus chose to use, they were all teenagers. When I look at David, when I look at Peter, when I look at the disciples, Jesus saw something special about using a young person to impact the world. I don't think people fully recognize that it was a group of teenagers that wrote the Bible and that inspired the Bible through God. And so I think one thing that I'm learning in this season is that teenagers do have the capacity to be spiritual because they're into rocks, they're into horoscopes, they're into all this other stuff that's happening, they're into angel numbers. So if the world gives them the opportunity to be spiritual, why shouldn't the church do so as well? I think when we fully have the opportunity to trust the next generation with the deep things of God, we'll see revival break out in them.
Well, I never even thought about that the Bible was written by teenagers.
Yep.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
For sure, for sure.
So especially after the pandemic, I feel like we're living in a time where people are trying to figure out where exactly does the church fit in. I think about the 60s and how the church kind of led us through different movements, the civil rights movement, being through the forefront of things like that, being a place where community members can gather, you can go where you need help. But I feel like today in the modern society, we're looking towards other places that the church used to be giving us those things. So, what do you think the role of the church is today?
The role of the church, I believe, is the same that it's been for generations. I think the role of the church is to be the hope of the world. Whenever I'm asked this question, I'm always using the analogy between a thermostat and a thermometer. When you have a thermostat and a thermometer that exists within the same room, the thermostat is meant to set the tone of the room, and the thermometer is meant to meet that or adjust to make sure that it's doing what the thermostat asked it to do. And I think the same way for society, the church is meant to set the tone for how the world should spin, how the world should operate, and society is meant to meet that tone. But I think so often for maybe the last 10 or 20 years or so, we've allowed the world to dictate what the church is going to do. So if the world is acting crazy, we're acting crazy. If the world is giving up, we're giving up. But when we get to a point where we say, you know what, the church is going to be who the church is going to be, we're going to do what God called us to do, and the world has to respond to us. I do believe that we'll see more Christians, more salvations, and even more just revival break out in the surrounding cities that the local church exists in.
Wow. I
Yeah.
like what you said about the thermometer and the thermostat. The church just has to set the tone and let the world catch up with the church. That's so
Yes.
important. So, what would you say has been one of your biggest career highlights so far?
Oh man, my biggest career highlights. Okay, I have two. I have two.
Okay.
The first one would be back in 2022. I actually won Youth Pastor of the Year for Richmond, Virginia. And it was an award, an opportunity that I honestly felt so undeserving and so unworthy of, recognizing that there were people who had been in ministry far longer than me. There were people who had grown their youth ministry to larger numbers than me. But to just see the city and honestly the state surround me and support me was honestly something that I'll never forget. I'm super grateful for just Richmond, Virginia, my church, my pastor, and the way people really do see what God placed on me to impact this generation. And I think the second one would be last year, we had our first ever youth conference at our church where we had over 200 teenagers gathering to really just pursue God and find freedom. So it was super special. I had never been to a youth conference as a kid. So the first youth conference that I was attending was the one that I was building myself. So that just speaks to the faithfulness and even redemption of God.
It does. So
Yeah.
tell me, what advice would you give to someone? They're a younger person, they feel like there's a call in their life, they may be in school, they may be at a job, but they really feel like this is something that they need to pursue. What advice would you give them?
I would say something that somebody told me when I first got started is do for one what you wish you could do for many. I think sometimes we measure growth or success by how many people we can impact. But what if God only called you to impact one person? What if God only called you to impact the cashier at the grocery store? If you believe that the call in your life is far bigger than the one person in front of you, you may have a misunderstanding of what God is calling you to do. When we think about the Great Commission, he didn't just say, go out and preach at conferences. He said, go out and preach the gospel. So that means I may preach it at work, I may preach it at church, I may preach it at Dollar Tree, but wherever I am, because God lives inside of me, I know that it's going to come out. So for somebody who is young, who wants to be in ministry, I would say, don't wait till you get the platform. Don't wait till you get the position. All that stuff is minor, but be who God is calling you to be, no matter which room, no matter which area or arena of life you live in. Because I promise you, your voice, your anointing, your purpose is going to break out no matter where you are.
Wow, I think that's so important, especially with social media, because we get caught up in, okay, I'm going to be a Christian influencer. I'm
Right,
going to share the word, and then you only get 2 likes, so you stop doing it, and you feel like, oh, maybe this isn't. But God didn't talk about Instagram
right,
followers or the
right.
number of people you impact. Long as you're impacting someone and sharing the gospel. So tell me, who are your preaching influences? Who do you like to listen to? Who inspires you?
Well, first, I have to shout out my pastor, Pastor Vernon Gordon at the Life Church. He has really walked me through the art of preaching and the art of communication. And what I love and respect about him so much is that he never just taught me how to preach on a platform, but he taught me that the art of communication has to show up with your family. It has to show up at the bank. It has to show up in a boardroom. You're not a good communicator if you can only preach the gospel. But can you talk to somebody about their faith? Can you talk to somebody about their marriage? Can you talk to somebody about their teenagers? If you only preach on platforms, then you're not really fulfilling what God is calling you to do. So grateful for the versatility of Pastor Vernon Gordon. I'm also grateful for just the charisma of Marissa Farrell. I love her preaching. I think she is just a leader in this generation for communication. Pastor Caleb Grant from Florida is somebody who I just honor his relevance and just revelatory spirit for God. And then Charlie Dates out of Chicago, his radical call to justice is something that blesses me.
Well, I love what you said. I love all of those pastors you listed, but I also love what you said about your pastor, how it's not just preaching the gospel, because I think it's those other conversations that
Yeah.
end up leading you to share the gospel with
Yep.
people to just show that you care about people.
Yeah.
So now I have some fun questions.
Okay.
So, what's your favorite thing to splurge on?
Oh, my favorite thing to splurge on, I was not expecting that. My favorite thing to splurge is probably honestly just Netflix. Like I could lay on the couch and watch TV all day long. And like I don't even have to go outside. I can get me some wings, some popcorn, and just sit on the couch and be like in my own little world resting and watching TV.
Wow, that's a good one. I don't know if you know this one, but I'm gonna try.
Okay.
NSYNC or Backstreet Boys?
Oh, you know I'm young. I'm only 22. I'm gonna say Backstreet Boys only because I've never heard of the other group. I feel like I'm disappointing everybody right now.
Never heard of the group. Okay, that's
Never heard
fine.
of it.
Okay, who's your favorite gospel artist?
My favorite gospel artist right now. Okay, you can never go wrong with Kurt Franklin. I just feel like his just generationally, he makes music for every type of Christian, every believer, and every age group. So I love Kurt Franklin.
Okay, I love that. Love Uncle Kirk. What's your go-to karaoke song?
My go-to karaoke song would probably, oh man, it would probably Can We Talk? Because I know every word to Can We Talk?
You know, I like how they brought that back
Right.
from back in the day. Now it's all viral all over again. I love that. Okay, so tell me what is next? Do you have any New Year's resolutions, any goals for this new year?
So honestly, that's something that I set with God with for a long time in December. I had these New Year's resolutions, I had these goals, but I got to a point where I said, God, am I making like my own to-do list or am I really connecting with you to see what you want me to do? And he did humble me. He said, hey, all these things you wrote down are stuff you want to do, but you never took time to ask me what I wanted you to do. And so I said, okay, cool. Like, God, what do you want me to do, at least for the first month of the year? And he said, I want you to become more like me. And I know that's super simple. And it's like, okay, like be like Jesus, sure. But if we ever take time to really study and model the ways and the methods of Jesus, I think sometimes we'll recognize that we may know about Jesus, but we don't often operate just like Jesus operated. And so, really, my goal, at least for this first month and first quarter of the year, is to see what ways in my life are disconnected from the ways of Jesus, and how do I close that gap so I can walk fully, not just in who God is calling me to be, but how do I become more like the God that I'm serving.
Wow. You are really preaching. I don't know if you know, but you're really dropping some gems, some important things. Say that again. What did you say?
Yeah, I
Most people know Jesus, but they don't know. Say it again.
most people know Jesus, but we don't know how to be like Jesus. And there's a difference. Like I can tell you about somebody, but it doesn't mean that I know them personally. When I know somebody, but I don't know them personally, I can tell you about them, but I can't act like them. When I have a real relationship and real communion and real intimacy with somebody, I can replicate and model their lifestyle. And so my goal for this year is how do I replicate Jesus? I think sometimes we say, this year I want to be a better version of myself. I don't want to be a better version of Alvin. I want to be more like Jesus. Because a better version of Alvin is what? I'm still human. I'm still weak. I'm still feeble. But how can I be more like Christ?
Wow, that's so important, Alvin. I love that. I don't want to be a better version of my. And so many people say that they're like, this year I'm going to be a new me, a better me. When we've already seen what we're capable of. I
If
love
you follow me, you're going to be in trouble. Follow Jesus.
follow Jesus. I love it.
Yeah,
So, Alvin, so before we leave, can you tell me where can people catch up with you? Where can we hear your sermons? Where can we see what you're up to?
for sure. You can always go to my Instagram, Alvin J. Hamilton. That's it, Alvin J. Hamilton. That's my Twitter name. That's my Instagram name. That's my Threads name. That's my Cash App name if you're looking for that too. But you can find me at the Life Church RBA in Richmond, Virginia. I also have a website, alvinhamiltonii.com. And really, I love to connect with anybody out there who is young and looking to pursue God more intimately.
Great. Okay, one more thing. Before we go, if we could play a gospel song right now, fit
Okay.
your mood, what would it be?
Oh Lord, a gospel song right now. It would probably be, let me think. Stomp by Kurt Franklin.
I love it. Gotta stick with Uncle Kirk. Thank
That's
you
the one.
so much, Pastor Alvin, for being here today. I've had a great time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.